In 1950s America, there was a lot of hysteria surrounding socialism. In a bizarre witch hunt, anyone suspected of being a communist was demonized.
And let every other power know that this hemisphere intends to remain the master of its own house.
If we had kept together after the last war, if we had taken common measures for our safety, this renewal of the curse need never have fallen upon us.
One of 3 key speeches given by Churchill during the Battle of France, this rousing address was delivered under less than ideal circumstances.
They only know the rules of a generation of self-seekers. They have no vision. And when there is no vision, the people perish.
Nicht der Staat hat uns geschaffen, sondern wir schaffen uns unseren Staat.
And the destruction, the life of the ongoing progress of the Negro be the destruction of the ongoing progress of the nation.
There are very few people control the world. Very few people. People would be staggered how few.
How many?
Well, I'm going to come to that in terms of it's fewer now than ever before, and why. But a lot of people have said in response to that, a few people can't control the world. There's too many people. It's not possible. Well, now we have a handful of people, which you could probably get on 10 fingers, or 2 hands, that control Google, control YouTube, owned by Google, control Facebook.
Google realized the more information it can get from its users, the further it can expand its advertising business model. The quality of search became irrelevant. From 2007, Google decides what appears in your search results, not based on your search queries or merits of the content you are looking for, but based on the economic interests of one of the greatest conglomerates in the world. From this day forth, Google is no longer the search engine it was originally created to be.
That absolutely dominate the information that most people see or don't see. We have a concentration of power in Silicon Valley, a very small area of the world, that is the greatest concentration of surveillance and censorship power the world has ever seen. Let's look at how it works. First of all, these entities operate in the unseen, overwhelmingly in the unseen. Because we, like I said earlier, live in a frequency band, a band of frequency. Anything beyond that frequency we can't see, we're not aware of. They can decide what you see and what you don't see, and they can trawl your data. In other words, the military intelligence community can, to find out the fine detail of your life from the information that you've posted on these various platforms. So that's what we're facing in terms of freedom of speech. It's disappearing. In fact, it doesn't exist. There is no freedom of speech. By the definition of freedom of speech is the freedom to speak your opinion and not have it censored and not have it banned. When I say they, I'm talking about a ridiculously few people. We've reached the point now where there is a global network of ultra-Zionist groups that answer to Israel and the Netanyahu regime currently, who are targeting anyone who is in any way questioning the fact that Israel is not God's gift to humanity in every last thing that it does. This does not only include the general population. The ones they focused most on are Jewish people. Jewish people who are questioning the Israeli treatment of the Palestinians, which is horrific, are being targeted by these ultra-Zionist hate groups I say hate groups because their modus operandi is to get the public to hate their targets, to silence them. And it's extraordinary how easy it is. You know, the ancient Chinese emperors used to claim the right to be emperor because of their descendants from the serpent gods. And the reason that these royal bloodlines and aristocratic bloodlines have incessantly, obsessively interbred is because they're holding this hybrid genetic program. And for a long time, they ruled because they were the special bloodline. What is it? Just down the road from us now in London, we have a head of state, even today, who is head of state because of her bloodline. The Queen. If she was a different bloodline, she might be cleaning the throne, not sitting on it. This is the nonsense of it. Why are you queen? Because someone had sex with someone and that person was born first, therefore they're the monarch. Sorry, I thought we lived in a civilized society with some form of intelligence. What's going on?
The majority of the Queen's powers reside in the royal prerogative. Now, there isn't actually a commonly accepted definition of what the royal prerogative actually is, mainly because the royal prerogative isn't something that's laid out in law. Most people agree, though, that it embodies the wide-sweeping powers, rights, privileges, and immunities at the hands of the monarch, including the powers to appoint and dismiss the Prime Minister and other ministers, grant assent to legislation, prorogue Parliament, deploy armed forces, and grant mercy, i.e. a pardon power. But the royal prerogative is not absolute, in part because it's not properly defined anywhere, and because Parliament is seen as sovereign in its own right. Also, both courts and Parliament can constrain the monarchy. Parliament can pass laws restricting its scope, and courts can rule on its use, something it quite famously did.
But across much of the world, as humanity started to awaken a bit more from its servility to these royal bloodlines, they couldn't sustain it any longer. And so the royal in-your-face control started to disperse. It's still around in some areas, like we still have a monarchy in here and the Commonwealth countries, but lots of countries have disappeared. But these bloodlines didn't. And their sense of being special and being, quote, royal never ended either. And so they moved into the dark suit professions of banking, of politics, of all the dark suit professions, government administration, etc. And they've gone on running the show ever since, while not being overtly royal. And of course, what happened with the so-called Great British Empire, or these other European empires, is these bloodlines went all over the world, and they imposed themselves in the North America, in South America, in Australia, all over the world. And they've gone on controlling ever since. But when you look at the situation from just a general population perspective, everything seems to be unconnected. People seem to be unconnected. But when you go deep into the shadows, they're not.